Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take stacks of research, wade through all the complexity, and really pull out the facts you need to know.
Yeah, and today we're plunging into, well, the world of sugar substitutes. They're pretty much everywhere, aren't they?
Absolutely. Marketed as this healthier choice, the guilt-free option in diet sodas, chewing gum, even kids' toothpaste sometimes.
Exactly. But our mission today is really specific. We're looking just at the evidence base for children and adolescents.
Right. And we're comparing two, frankly, conflicting areas.
Mm.
First, how good are these substitutes at preventing cavities? Dental health.
And then the flip side,
Yeah.
are they potentially linked to hidden metabolic risks, things associated with chronic diseases down the line?
It's kind of fascinating, isn't it, how swapping out just one thing, sugar, can have such different effects depending on what you measure.
Totally. So we've dug into systematic reviews on the dental side and also some cross-sectional studies looking at perception, consumption, and the surprising links to body composition risk factors.
Okay, let's start with the good news then. The mouth. Dental caries cavities. I mean, they're probably the most common disease globally for kids and teens, right? Ages 6 to 19.
Yeah, it's a massive issue. And if you're a parent, you know prevention is key. The main advice is always cut down on sugar, cut down on those fermentable carbs.
And this is exactly where sugar substitutes come in as like a potential tool.
Right. The research we looked at makes a really clear distinction between two main types.
Okay, so first you have the low-intensity ones, the sugar alcohols, things like xylitol, sorbitol, erythritol.
Correct. They do have some calories, but the key thing is the bacteria in your mouth that cause cavities, they find it really hard to ferment these into harmful acids.
They don't erode the enamel as much.
Exactly. And then you've got the high-intensity sweeteners. These are the ones people often call artificial, like aspartame, saccharin.
Hundreds of times sweeter than sugar, generally no calories.
Right. But here's the interesting bit for teeth. When we looked at the clinical evidence for dental health, nearly all the solid data, the efficacy data, focuses on those low-intensity ones, the sugar alcohols.
Okay, tell us more. There was a big review, wasn't there?
Yeah, a really comprehensive, systematic review. 15 studies, over 6,000 kids and teens involved, looking specifically at preventing cavities in permanent teeth.
And what did it find for those sugar alcohols?
Well, the data really backs them up. Xylitol was studied the most, and it showed a significant beneficial effect. Compared to no treatment or placebo, it helped prevent caries.
Significant how? Statistically?
Yeah, statistically significant. The p-value was 0.005, which is pretty strong evidence in this kind of research.
Okay, what about sorbitol?
Sorbitol also showed a significant benefit, which is good news too. P-value wall 0.03, so also helpful.
But how do they compare? Xylitol versus sorbitol?
Ah, good question. When they compared them directly, the evidence actually points to xylitol being superior to sorbitol for preventing cavities.
Really? Even stronger evidence.
Yep. The p-value for that comparison was 0.003. It seems xylitol might be better, possibly because it's particularly good at reducing those specific bad bacteria, like mutant streptococci, the main cavity culprits.
So for just protecting teeth, the path seems pretty clear, at least for those two.
It does, but here's a really important gap you need to be aware of.
Okay.
High-intensity sweeteners, like aspartame, they're in tons of products for kids, diet drinks, and so on.
Right.
But that big systematic review, it found 0 clinical trials looking at whether those sweeteners prevent cavities in this age group. None.
So we literally don't have the evidence for things like aspartame and dental health in kids.
Correct. We can say, based on evidence, that xylitol or sorbitol products might be a good part of a dental hygiene plan. But we just can't make the same claim for high-intensity sweeteners based on current human clinical data for cavity prevention. The evidence simply isn't there.
Okay, so the dental side seems pretty clear for xylitol and sorbitol.
Yeah.
Good for teeth. But this is always the issue with these kinds of replacements, isn't it? What about the rest of the body?
Exactly, we have to flip the coin, because what might be helping your teeth could potentially be doing something more complicated for your overall metabolic health.
Right. And this brings us to this concept called normal weight obesity, NWO.
Yeah, NWO. Basically, these are people who look normal weight according to their BMI, their body mass index, the standard chart.
This is fine on paper.
Totally. But internally, they're carrying excess body fat. The definition used in the studies was over 25% body fat for males, over 30% for females, even with that normal BMI.
And why is that a concern if they look healthy?
Because NWO, even when found in adolescence, is strongly linked with higher risks for cardiometabolic problems later on. things like dyslipidemia, unhealthy cholesterol levels, and insulin resistance. It's like a hidden health bomb.
Okay, so it's a risk factor we need to watch.
Yeah.
How do sweeteners fit in?
Well, this is where it gets, frankly, a bit shocking. One study focused specifically on these normal weight adolescents, and it found that the ones who did have NWO, the hidden fat, had significantly higher odds of using sugar substitutes.
Higher odds compared to normal weight kids without the excess fat.
Exactly. The overall odds ratio was 3.84.
So nearly 4 times more likely to be using sweeteners if they had NWO. That's quite a link.
It is, but wait, it gets even more pronounced when they separated the data by sex. For males.
Yeah.
For adolescent males with NWO, the odds ratio of them using sweeteners was 16.33.
16 times more likely.
That sounds huge.
Yeah.
That almost sounds causal, even though I know these studies don't prove cause.
It's an absolutely striking number. And yes, the researchers definitely discussed why it might be so extreme in males.
What did they suggest?
Well, remember, this is cross-sectional. It's just a snapshot in time. So we can't say the sweeteners caused the NWO.
Right, the classic correlation issue.
Exactly. They talked about reverse causality. It's possible, maybe even likely, that using sweeteners is a consequence of something else.
Like what? Like maybe body dissatisfaction or maybe an attempt to restrict calories. And perhaps in teenage boys, this behavior seeking out diet products is a much stronger signal of underlying issues or dietary patterns that lead to fat gain.
So they reach for the diet drink thinking they're saving calories, but maybe that makes them feel okay about eating more unhealthy stuff elsewhere, like fast food.
That's precisely the hypothesis this source raises. The perceived saving from the sweetener gets compensated for elsewhere, leading to overall poor nutrition and fat deposition, especially around the middle, which drives NWO.
So the sweetener use, particularly in those boys with a huge odds ratio, might just be a marker, a sign of a bigger problematic dietary pattern or body image issue.
It could well be. It points toward a really complex behavioral loop rather than necessarily a simple, direct physiological effect of the sweetener itself causing the fat gain. It's messy.
Okay, that complexity really leads us straight into how people think about these things versus what they actually do. Public attitudes.
Yeah, there's a big disconnect here. Generally, the public seems pretty skeptical about artificial sweeteners, or AS as they're often called.
How skeptical?
Well, in one study, about 64% of people thought AS were harmful overall, and that concern was even higher among parents.
Makes sense. How high for parents?
74% of parents had negative views compared to about 54% of students. So parents are definitely more worried about what their kids are consuming.
But does that worry translate into action? Into checking labels?
Ah, that's the problem. Not really. Awareness that sweeteners are in products is quite high. Almost 89% of students knew they were common in drinks like juices, sodas, even protein shakes.
Okay, so they know they're out there.
But actually reading the food labels to check, engagement was, let's say, low. Really low.
How low?
Only about 16% of parents and just 8% of students said they always read the labels.
Wow. So there's this huge gap. People think they might be bad, but they don't consistently check if they're actually consuming them.
Exactly. It's a major vulnerability. They're kind of flying blind. You perceive a risk, but you don't check for it.
Why do you think that is? Just too hard, too confusing?
Probably a mix of things. The sources suggest people are often just unaware they're present in so many everyday products. Plus, labels can be confusing, tiny print, and people are busy, especially parents.
Yeah, makes sense. And these things are really widespread, right?
Oh, absolutely. The sources mention that in the U.S., over 70% of beverages marketed towards kids contain non-sugar sweeteners.
70%.
And sometimes, get this, they have both artificial sweeteners and added sugars in the same product.
Seriously, why would they do that?
It's often about achieving a certain taste profile while still being able to claim reduced sugar, perhaps. But it makes navigating labels even trickier for consumers.
No kidding. Has this led to any policy action? Demands for clearer info?
Yes. Health bodies in the U.S., like the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Heart Association, have called for better data and much clearer labeling.
And internationally.
We're seeing action there, too. Places like Mexico, Colombia, Argentina. They've actually put warning labels right on the front of packages.
What do they say?
Something direct, like contains sweeteners, not recommended for children. Really clear messaging.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together. It's definitely not a simple picture for sugar substitutes, is it? There's a real split.
A clear dichotomy, yeah. On one hand, if your main goal is preventing cavities in kids,
then the evidence seems pretty solid for using those low-intensity sweeteners like xylitol and sorbitol.
Mm.
Targeted use makes sense there.
Right. That's a demonstrated benefit based on clinical trials. But
But if your main concern is metabolic health, overall body composition,
then the data we have, especially from that adolescent study, links general consumption of sweeteners. It wasn't specific about which type in that study, mind you, to higher risk factors for normal weight obesity.
with that really alarming association in males.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which raises serious questions about, the potential unintended long-term consequences if people are using these substitutes widely as just a general diet strategy.
But we need to be careful about the limitations here, right?
Absolutely. We have to stress the caveats. Those NWO studies were cross-sectional. Association, not causation. We cannot say for sure the sweeteners caused the NWO.
Okay. And the dental studies.
Even the dental review, which was generally positive for xylitol and sorbitol, noted issues. High heterogeneity, meaning the studies were quite different from each other, and potential risk of bias in some of the included trials. Science is rarely perfectly clean.
And the biggest blind spot.
Still, the high-intensity sweeteners, like aspartame, we really lack good clinical human data on them for both cavity prevention and especially for long-term metabolic health in children. We don't know the full story there.
Which really brings us to the final thought for you, listening. Hashtag tag outro.
Yeah, let's wrap this up. We've seen that xylitol and sorbitol look like useful tools specifically for protecting teeth. No argument there based on the evidence.
But the wider picture, using non-sugar sweeteners just as a general replacement for sugar, that seems tangled up with other lifestyle issues, maybe poor diet overall, body image concerns, especially leading to risks like NWO.
And remember that disconnect. People are generally wary of sweeteners, but very few actually check labels consistently.
Right. So considering that, and also that the World Health Organization now advises against using non-sugar sweeteners for long-term weight management.
It leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? How much should the public health message shift, instead of just finding a different kind of sweetener to replace sugar?
Maybe the focus should be more on promoting whole, unprocessed foods. Foods that, don't need any kind of sweetener, artificial or otherwise.
It forces us to think about that principle. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, especially when it comes to kids' long-term health. Maybe the simplest solution is just less sweet stuff overall. Something to think about.
And that's a wrap on this episode of MedDecode. I really appreciate you joining me today. If something we talked about sparked your interest, or if there's a medical term that's been bugging you, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, be a pal and share it with a friend. We'll catch you on the next one.